Hey there, good to see everyone. My name is Douglas Ferguson. I'm here with Judy Rees today. Welcome, great to have you.
Hello, this is new for me, so I'm a bit nervous as well as excited.
Excellent. Yeah. So I just had you on the podcast and it was a fantastic episode. We just launched it. It's been a minute since we talked, but we finally got it produced and out the door literally the other day. So that was a load of fun. We were talking about clean language, which
Mm.
have written a book about and know a lot about. And most recently, you've been doing a lot of work around creating engaging online events. And so I'm really excited to chat with you about that today. It's something we're both passionate about. What are some things that make for better and more engaging events and sessions? And I'm just going to put a banner up here for folks to kind of say hi and ask questions. Love for folks to jump in. But yeah, just curious to get like kind of kick us off with some thoughts on engaging events.
Well, let's not get sidetracked by the clean language thing this time, but clean language underpins everything I do in
Yes.
relation to online events. The idea that there's no point in me just talking at people, expecting them to have a zip top head and information just be able to pour in. As an event designer, as an event creator, somehow I've got to create an experience that generates the change that I want to see in them. And that's not going to be achieved just by me talking at people.
Hmm.
It's going to be achieved by creating a moment, an experience, something memorable, something that matters to people. Um, Go on.
Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say that really definitely resonates. This notion of what was the moment that was created, and you mentioned something that mattered to people, and I always like to come back to Priya Parker's comments around how are you honoring your guests, like making them feel really honored, and you've taken time to think that through and figure out what's required to make them feel that way.
Yeah. So when we're designing online events, the main conversation we have with organizations is about the fact they need to design,
Mm,
that they need to pay attention up front to what is this experience they're creating. If it was an in the room event, of course they would stop and think, what's the venue going to be like? What's the food going to be like? What's the lighting going to be like? What about flowers and decoration? All of that kind of thing. Somehow, because it's online, they've stopped thinking about the participant experience and they get trapped in this little blinkered space about what's the message we are going to deliver, as if that was actually going to change anything.
I think that's a really great point, and want to encourage our listeners to actually uh, contribute here to this question. What would you change if you took a moment to stop and think? And Judy, I want to throw out something that I've noticed and get your thoughts here. It seems as though the phenomenon that you're talking about is somewhat impacted by the fact that these tools create an environment. They control the space very literally,
Yeah.
and so when people just look and say, "Oh, well, there's the tool that's been chosen," or that it seems like I have to default into, then they let the tool make all the decisions. And I always like to tell people that if you stop and think and design, as you suggested, then we can basically put that tool in a full Nelson and like in a vice and like crank it to enforce it to our will, so that we make it do the things we need to be done. And if it can't work, then that might force us to pick a different tool.
And we're seeing a number of customers at the moment who've already got the tool because they were going to have their event in person this year. And they've got a tool which is designed to stream the talks from an in-person conference onto the online world. So it's just a streaming tool.
Hmm.
But the people who are supplying it have told them that's a good enough tool for online events. And you have to break it to them, often quite bluntly, it won't do. A tool which is designed to just broadcast things into the ether is not a tool that's designed to engage people. The two things just don't necessarily fit together. Of course, you might want streaming for certain circumstances, but actually, if the point of your event is, for example, for the participants to have conversations with each other about what they just heard, or to have conversations in the coffee area or in the bar about things of mutual interest. Mostly when people go to conferences, that's part of why they go. They don't go there just to listen to the speakers. The internet's full of bloody speakers. You don't go to a conference just to hear the speakers. You go to a conference to be part of an experience with other people, to meet people, to have conversations, to find out what's the buzz, and potentially to meet people to take your next business decision, your next career move, all of those things. If you exclude all that human contact from your online event, you're missing the point.
Absolutely. And, it's interesting. I think people's default is to just say, "Oh, we'll just have a webinar," or "Oh, we'll just do this." And while those things may have been okay in the past, I think just the sheer volume of time that we're spending on the internet, and that being our main mode of connection, people are forced to step back and think a little bit more intentionally about the experiences they're delivering. So I want to maybe get a little bit tactical here. What are some ways that you're seeing that folks can add a little more spice or a little more connection, so that it's not just a single way? I'm sure there's so many things that can be done, but is there's something that's a great starting point for folks to just kind of start thinking about?
Well, one of the most obvious ones is to think about your audience as a community and think, how can we get these people
Mm.
to participate before we start and after we finish? Um, so they're already talking to you and to each other as things get going. Now, of course, that depends on tools. You can't just give everybody else's phone number and have them ring each other up. That's not how it works. Um, but you can use online community tools, even on a short-term basis, to get your group fired up about what it is you're going to talk about. You can start them preparing. You can start them thinking about the questions that they're going to have about whatever your topic is. And you can get them connecting with each other and thinking, oh, it's really exciting. So-and-so's here. And one of the things that's lovely about online events is you can bring together people who really are part of a niche interest. So
Mhm.
you and I are in a new niche interest area of active facilitation of online events. We could never have connected if it wasn't for the internet. Well, we might have done one day, but we're on opposite sides of the Atlantic. It would be really, really hard.
Mhm. Yeah,
In
I
this
love
online
that.
space, you can gather people.
Absolutely. It also makes me think a little bit about just this notion of the prompts, the questions, even how you're thinking about inviting people into the space. Um, it all comes back to your point around the design. And I'll just make a nuanced comment there, which is being very intentional about the purpose,
Mm,
because we can't make any of these decisions unless we're clear on why. Like, why do these people care to come together? Like you mentioned that we're a niche group. There's a niche interest, and it would make sense for us to come together. But let's get clear on that why. Like, what are we hoping? What are our hopes? And that requires understanding your audience really well. To your point, like if we're going to ask really good questions and get really curious and get them excited about thinking about things a little differently, then we need to understand. We kind of need to predict a little bit around like what's going through their minds and what will get them more excited.
mm. And what's another brilliant thing about the internet is we don't have to guess. We can ask them. We can talk to people. We can be part of a conversation with people because it's relatively easy to connect with them.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether you've done this, but one of my colleagues in the past, when we used to be able to do things in the room, was in the habit of getting whoever was in the room together and then going, "What would you like to have happen?"
Mm,
at the beginning of
yeah.
the day, which is fine, but actually there was a reason. They were invited for a purpose, and you might as well be explicit about it.
That's right.
But then there are some subtleties about how do you make the purpose really clear without making people feel railroaded about how you're going to achieve that purpose,
Yeah.
and enable them to have enough space to do the creative work that human beings are capable of, while at the same time um, achieving the purpose. And I think some of the things we do automatically in the room, in where we build psychological safety gradually, for example, by greeting people at the door, making sure they're on the list, telling them where to hang their coats, all of that kind of stuff, we need the equivalents
Mm.
in an online event. There's no use just hitting the button on the hour and saying, right, we're here, and expect
Also,
everyone to feel okay.
that's so good. It's like thinking about how you welcome people through into the event and through the threshold. Like, is there something special happening that kind of welcomes them in and greets them and honors them? And even accounting, like I think so many people don't account for the fact that nobody shows up. You kind of assume because it's digital and transactional and just like so like on like accurate maybe that everyone's just going to show up at the same time. Whereas, like, if you hosted an in-person event, you always have a soft opening. The doors
Mm,
open early, but like it seems like people wait and just flick that. Well, they got the Zoom welcome room open, and then everyone's just waiting. And sorry, the waiting room. There's waiting in there, and then they flip the thing, and now everyone's in. How about just design a moment there where you people kind of come in and there's something soft and engaging happening, so you can kind
mm.
of just like mimic that moment that people would normally have that's just natural.
Exactly, and when you do that, people are absolutely delighted. One of
Hmm.
a participant on one of our events called it the magic waiting room. It's like, "Is this magic? I didn't know Zoom could do this." When the host of the event was there with me, said, "Hello, Fred, lovely to see you. Excellent to meet, here's Judy, nice to meet you," and now I'm going to send you off into this other space where you're going to be with so and so, and the thing you've got in common with them is da 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 da.
Yep.
And we'll call you back when everyone's arrived.
So good.
And why wouldn't you do that online?
That's right.
High quality facilitation of, the in-person salon involves introducing human beings to human beings, explaining what they've got in common, so they understand why they should talk to each other.
Yes, I think it's so critical to mimic those moments. And it's funny because I I find folks will mimic certain things that are just totally unnecessary to mimic, and then they're missing out on other opportunities because maybe it's like almost like blindness because that's the way
Mm,
the technology works. Let me just default into the technology. But at the end of the day, the technology was made for like boardroom meetings. And I would say many boardroom meetings are, I would say those behaviors are kind of part and parcel of the problem that we're all in right now, because everyone's been like everyone went remote and was like, oh, we're just kind of doing the things that we did before we were remote. And the thing is they weren't serving us that well to begin with,
mm.
but we made do because we were so used to it. And it was like, and now they've permeated our events as well. Our events and gatherings have now started to look like really boring meetings.
But they don't have to.
Mm-mm.
And one of the most interesting things I've heard in the last couple of weeks is Jackie Weaver. I don't know whether you saw the viral video about Jackie Weaver managing the worst online council meeting there's ever been. Look her up.
Awesome. I
Anyway,
will.
she's an official in a association of local councils here in the UK, and she is leading a campaign on Twitter and elsewhere to get the government to allow councils to continue meeting online. She says the move to online council meetings has transformed the level of public engagement.
Mm,
So it's almost the opposite of what people thought would happen. They thought if meetings were online, then nobody would show up and listen. What actually happened was lots of people showed up and listened. Young people, older people, people from more diverse backgrounds dived in and got involved, even
that's
in these
amazing.
formal council meetings.
It makes so much sense, right? Because if people are interested in engaging, it's a lot more effort to, get in your car, drive down to a municipal building that probably has poor parking because it's in the middle of downtown or wherever, and you might not live close to downtown. Traffic may be prohibitive. You may have other personal requirements that mean that it's hard to get there, but just tuning in and you don't have commute, etc. It's impressive. That's amazing. The other thing I'll maybe leave us with too is I've been really fascinated by how it shifted some of the psychology in meetings, and it's been on record that Clarence Thomas has asked more questions and put forth more objections since everything went virtual, which is like really fascinating because um, for whatever reason he's like more innately safe.
Mm,
He has more psychological safety or maybe it just slowed things down enough for him to like feel comfortable. But man, it is when behavior shifts like that, especially in someone who is very you know I mean look at the pedigree of a Supreme Court justice, like that you wouldn't expect that to be someone that's holding back.
mm.
But clearly there was some element of the of this virtual setting that made it more comfortable for him to speak up, which is like really fascinating.
There's something liberating about this space. Is it the fact that we're not paying for the building? I don't
Right.
know, but but it is hugely liberating. You can definitely involve a wider diversity of people, and if you set it up well, people are more likely to speak. But you can also do the opposite. You can shut
Yep.
people up and shut people out very easily in this space as well.
Excellent. Well, Judy, we're over time. I want to just thank you for jumping in and chatting with me today. And that's a beautiful point to end on. We need to be very careful about how we invite people and be very critical of our design so we're not shutting people out.
I agree.
Excellent. Well, thanks for joining, and we'll talk again sometime soon.
Nice to be here. Thanks.